Morena tātou. We'll make a start for this morning's meeting. So good morning to everybody. Welcome to the Waiari Kaitiaki Advisory Group meeting for Wednesday the 5th of June 2024. Just to make everybody aware, we are live streaming this meeting, and if you follow the normal procedures, I suppose, with the use of the intercom, just so that people can hear, particularly online. And if you do have a cell phone, just make sure it's on silent. I'll hand over to Uncle Manu to open us with a karakia. Orera, ria kara kia koe. Tuatahi rā, ka tuku mihi kia koera e manu whakatūwhiri hea tēnei o tō tātane hui. Me kira kia tātou katoa kua tau nei, kia koera rāpuni i tō hui huinga tuatahi, nō reira nau mahara mai, i ngā āpiha, i ngā kaimahi tēnā koutou katoa. Just wanted to acknowledge Uncle Manu for his karakia, and then also for Rāpuni's first meeting as a representative for Tapuika. We'll just move through our agenda. We've got apologies from Mayor James Denyer, from Chris Napier and Sam Hemmer. Can I get a mover to those apologies? John Scrimmager and Bill Wasley. All those in favour say aye. Okay, we'll move to the next part. We don't have a public forum. We don't have any late items and we don't have any confidential business to be transferred into the open. I do have a change to the order of business, and that is to swap item 9.1 and 9.2, so bring forward the operational update, and Peter will lead us through that. Moving through to the minutes from the 6th of March 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are none, can I have a mover, Bill, and a seconder to those minutes, who was present at the meeting? Manu Pene. So we'll accept those minutes as a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, moving to item 7 is declarations of conflict of interest. I call for any, if there are any. There are none. And we'll move to the business of the day, the operational update. I'll hand over to you, Peter.
Morena. The report's there. I take it as read. I'm happy to take any questions. I think just two comments that I wanted to make in addition. I think it's the flows in the stream are still well above the long-term average, but they are starting to trend downwards. So I think that's to be expected. The other item I wanted to raise is that we have had an additional ecological monitoring report done. That report came in towards the end of May, so that wasn't included in this operational report, but it will be included in the next meeting. But if it's desired, I can send that report out ahead of next meeting, just to circulate it to all the attendees.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think it would be worth circulating that report. That would be helpful. Are there any questions of Peter for his report?
The recent weather events that we've had and that flooding that's occurred at the Waiari, does this report show that data? Or? Oh, you would have been on holiday, sorry.
Yeah, I did get some feedback, but this report doesn't incorporate that. Again, I can send out an additional note, just what occurred during that, but it wasn't an exceptional flooding event compared to what we had in 2023.
Any other comments or questions for Peter with his report? Peter, for your report. Can I have a mover to Peter's report? Okay, Darlene to move, and can I have a seconder, Rapuni? And that is to receive the report, Waiari Operational Report Period, March 2024. And Peter will also circulate the monitoring report post this meeting. So I've got a mover and a seconder. Any other final comments? Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour to receive the report say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we'll move to item 9.1, which is the Waiari Kaitiaki Advisory Group Cultural Recognition Development Update, and I'll hand over to Kelvin.
Morena. I'm just going to put a PowerPoint up, if that's okay, to complement this report as I work our way through it. If you go to the next slide, thank you. So obviously the main purpose of our cultural initiatives are under those 6 particular headings, and obviously there's been a lot discussed in the last 2 years around some of those, and certainly in the last 12 months there's been a lot more activity in each of those areas. Just go to the next slide, please. So from our March 24 meeting, there was a presentation by Ilva Conroy, which was actually a great presentation, talked about Kaituna and parts of the Waiari and how it's been commissioned by Western Bay to look at some of the potential sites and things around both culture and environment. And it was very apparent at that presentation there was a need that there should be a greater alignment between the 2 councils, or all 3 councils I should say. I mean, we've certainly taken it on board. I think part of the journey about the CAG team was that we'd started a couple of years ago, but I see the benefit of definitely sharing information between the 2. So obviously staff are keen to progress across all 3 organisations to progress some of these initiatives, and I think the other thing to point out is the timing for each of our councils has been it's really unusual in terms of a LTP. They've all at 3 different times. Normally they'd all be together, so therefore when you're going through doing presentations and seeking funding, you can normally wrap them all up into one, and this hasn't happened this time around. So I'll just cover on that in a further slide later on, but certainly these things have sort of made it a little bit trickier to try and get some traction on some things, and certainly we know that to be able to achieve things and have consultants, you need to be able to have some funding available for that. But there are a couple of things out of that meeting which we'll touch on a bit later on this presentation around some actions from the membership. So if I go to the next slide, unfortunately Sam's missed the meeting. He's overseas again, but part of his last sort of couple of months has been in discussion with various people around trying to get some traction on a few of these initiatives. And so I think there's 2 areas that have been chosen from the initial site visit that was undertaken where there could be some opportunities. And obviously Tawapito area and the Waiari Bridge area, the 2 sites that have been honed in on. Now I think Sam had sent information out and was looking for some feedback. He indicated before he went away that there hadn't been enough dialogue around those options, but there was definite desire that we should be moving forward. So he obviously, you just go to the next one in here. He decided that he would put, which is in the documentation there, some direction around heading forward and what as a group we should try and focus on. So again, not being party to those meetings, I'm sitting here today maybe looking for any people that were involved in those meetings to maybe have a bit of discussion today on it. But that information I've just taken straight out of the documentation that's in your agenda there. Just go to the next slide. Thank you. And likewise for the Waiari Bridge. The crux of this one is probably the Waiari Bridge. There's work going on within Western Bay, and obviously rather than duplication, it's better that we try and work together to achieve an outcome. So again, it hinges back on the fact about councils having to work together to get an outcome on this process. Just go to the next one in here. So this was what Sam had left me in terms of if we wanted to achieve some direction on these, we'd need to look at getting some discussions going today and then for it to be signed off. Now, Tauranga City has the ability at the moment with funding been approved in the LTP to be able to get some of these things underway. Also we'll touch on Regional Council and Western Bay shortly in terms of where they are on things. But it means that getting some direction means that we can move forward. I'm also conscious that this is the last meeting that as a group we'll have with our commissioners, and then we're going through an election process. So again, for me, it's around getting some direction. I'll come back to this slide again when we'll just have a debate. If you go to the next one. So there was a meeting held with Regional Council, and unfortunately Rapuni was our only representative at that meeting. And I understand from having a discussion that it was a reasonably short meeting, but they're going to have to reschedule that meeting. People have not been available. It's been a busy time, lots of things going on. But thank you, Rapuni, for having that initial discussion. And something we've got to keep working on the next couple of months. Just go the next slide, thanks. I think in terms of the funding, we know at the moment we have within Western Bay, within Tauranga City, a budget for the next 2 years of 250,000. That's for next financial year and 250 the following year. We currently have 250k sitting in our financial year this year, which runs out 3 weeks' time. We have put a submission into Regional Council, the CACAS, and we're still pending the outcome of that discussion, and we've just completed preparing a submission which is with Shad and Darlene at the moment to be presented to Western Bay. All three, or both submissions are of similar nature in terms of the content and the funding that we're seeking. So that just gives you a bit of a status of where funding is at the moment. Can you go to the next one? So one of the resolutions from the March meeting was it was suggested that all the chairs get together from the various groups, and we actually struggled again, but we finally got to have a meeting on the 21st of May as a collective group, and I think all attendees on there had a positive outlook and could see that a collaborative approach to sharing knowledge around what each group is doing was a good thing. And I think part of the outcome of that was it suggested that a small team of people explore these opportunities further. So look, I'm going to probably throw it open to Darlene and Shad if you want to just maybe comment on, I mean, Shad, you sort of had a bit to say in the meeting there, and Darlene too. I'll leave it with both of you to maybe just talk about what was discussed.
Thanks, Kelvin. So in terms of that particular action, so we did manage to get all of the parties together, and I suppose the focus of bringing all the parties together was trying to get a better understanding around who was doing what, and trying to drive toward better coordination, alignment and efficiency in terms of what resourcing has been available, particularly for Te Marawa Kaituna. I do understand Te Ohu Parawai that's still working its way through consenting process. But it was useful for us to have that conversation. I think, given the commitment that Tauranga City's made in terms of resourcing some of the cultural recognition, and understand the need to try and get some stuff done and delivered, particularly, from a tangata whenua perspective. But it was a useful conversation. So the outcome from that, as noted in the slide, was for the technicians to go away, to look at their various programs and to see if we can get alignment across each of those. It was useful to have Pim DeMonchi online from the Regional Council, talking about the work the Regional Council is doing along the river. Well, actually, for the catchment with Te Maro Kaitiaki, which includes the Waiari. So I suppose clear direction from that meeting that we do need to be more aligned. I suppose there's, and just going back to your earlier slides, there's, and you're right, this financial year's coming to a close and we've still got 250k sitting in the budget. So we do need to make some decisions about whether we kick on and then work alongside the other groups around what resourcing is available, particularly around the environmental enhancement sides of things and access to the river, to see if we can still continue to make and deliver on some of those aspirations and outcomes of the iwi and hapu in particular. I'll hand over to Darlene. She was also in the meeting.
Just in terms of the meeting, it was interesting to see the different projects that have been happening. So Western Bay, obviously through Alva, have been doing a lot of investigations in terms of the Waiari. I think one thing that we all did identify was there would be 2 Māori models for the both consents, one for Te Ohu Parawai and then for the joint water take. I guess the question that was raised was what would be monitored in terms of Te Ohu Parawai, but because one of the conditions of the Māori model for the joint water take was that above and below the wastewater treatment plant, above and below the water intake, and that's something that Western Bay will work through. It's the other things that we sort of talked about was ensuring that we were all working together, because the meeting was wonderful. We found out so many things that were happening that probably Sam needed to be involved in, because there's room for alignment, definitely that, but it appeared that we were sort of working against each other basically, and not together. So I don't know. We're waiting for the next meeting that Calvin's coordinating, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Sorry, just I'll hand over to John as well, because John was also in the meeting. He might have some comments as well. John, can you?
In response to Darlene's comment there about working against each other, I think it's more working in isolation from each other, and not having an understanding of what the different groups are doing. And I think, I do agree with it. That's important, that we can do a lot better in that space.
We'll go to Maru and then Raponi, and then we'll come back to Kelvin.
I've always had concern of the Waiari. There's not enough collaboration with the Waiari. The first point is we actually need to know the benefits of the Waiari. The Waiari is important to the regional economy and national economy because of the Port of Tauranga. Port of Tauranga is the gateway to Japan. Tauranga City Council gets its water from the Waiari. So it has a very, very important part, not only on the regional economy, but on the national economy, because of the trade that goes out of Tauranga. And the use of water is highly important to that. Now, the protection of water, in terms of the Papamore Hills, I'll give you an example. I've called for a literature review on the Papamore Hills. The reason when we went to court with Judge Smith. Kaitiaki was an important part of it, and the Waiari gave the story from mountains to the sea, where the blood veins of the Waiari starts from Tawhiri Mātea, that's the wind that blows a warm wind against the cold front and creates all the nooks, the crannies and creeks that comes down and enters into the Waiari. They need to be protected, aqua filters and all that sort of stuff. You're then looking after the quadruple bottom line, social, cultural, environmental and economic development. So that's how important the Waiari is. And the collaboration shouldn't only be just the councils. It should be the Department of Conservation. It should be, it's a national policy should be part of the national policy statement. And if you're short of bucks, that's where it all is.
Kia ora tātou. Yeah, just a bit of context about why we went to Tawake Pito, because I was at that meeting in the bridge project. I guess definitely from our perspective, there'll both be things that will be seen and very, they can be in before next summer. Our whānau have been waiting a long time to see outcomes from this. You know, we've had to, we've taken a beating from our whānau around this. What are they going to see from it? So Tawake Pito was a focus, because it's an immediate swimming area and stuff that they will see happening. It sort of gives the perception that we're, to our whānau, that we're on track, we're actually doing something, getting some traction. We've been around this table for a long time. So that was a bit of context around that. So going into the next bit, so talking about collaboration across our particularly tangata whenua members and not just councils, is that, and across different advisory groups. Just want everyone to appreciate the complexity and the amount of capacity that requires from tangata whenua with very little remuneration or any sort of resource to resource that. I think in the consideration for what's being resourced, everything in here is predominantly tangible. I'm looking at what does resourcing for the capacity of the involvement of tangata whenua, what is the capability of the tangata whenua members that are involved. The members here from tangata whenua have an advisory capacity. We sit around this table and we provide advice, we receive reports. The nature of the game has changed slightly now that we have dollars, right? We're starting to do something. So the capability that's sitting around the table is not necessarily there to work with councils to deliver on the recreational assets construction. I mean, we're pulling in our kaiwhakairo to do carvings and po. So the game's changed slightly. What's not being accounted for in here is all of that time for tangata whenua comes at a cost. We don't have the budgets to cover the time of our people to contribute and participate in this. So some further discussions need to be happening around. So I understand the council is leading the operational component of this, which is great. And we don't want to take that leadership, but we do want to maybe either form a sub-working group where we can appoint different types of capabilities and skills to work along council with the delivery of these outcomes. But again, that'll come at some sort of cost, because it is costing us. We have employees in some of our entities that are quite capable in doing some of this work. But who's going to cover that? And is that something that's being accounted for in these estimates? So yeah, just a question back.
I agree with you, Rapuni. Look, in terms of the estimates, the original numbers I came up with was about 1.6 million, and again it was done at a really high level. One of the things around these initiatives, obviously they were generated by iwi, which is important, and council very conscious around one trying to give status over another one. So they're all, as we've clearly spelt out, all of equal importance, and I'm fully conscious that when we price things, we talked about consultants, but consultants can also be members of iwi hapu groups. There's no question there. It's around us getting something tangible on the ground. And look, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you go to the Waiari now, there's nothing there that tells you the significance of Waiari. Yeah, I've learned over the years it's extremely important. So from a Pākehā's point of view, having an initial sign that actually spells out the cultural significance to me makes sense. So the chosen projects so far, those two you've got, would get us some runs on the board and actually would achieve some things. But I think the challenge for us will be then trying to work through how do we achieve all the other initiatives, and some are shovel ready, if you use the term, to get going, others will take a bit of time. But I think that's what we need to work to do, and having the plan. I think the foresight was that this wasn't a 12-month exercise, it's a long-term exercise. And at least we now have some funding in place for the next couple of years. I'm hopeful that both the other councils will obviously be contributing. That will help us to be able to move forward on these things. So yeah, I'll take your point around that. And nothing's fixed in stone at the moment.
Thanks for that. No, good. And just to, so in those consultancy fees or consultant fees, was that considered that tangata whenua would be remunerated for their contributions?
Oh, definitely,
Okay.
definitely, yeah.
And I guess, yes, there has been a lack of collaboration across all parties, all groups. I can say that going forward, especially with my involvement and some of us, we're of our tangata whenua members, we can work together. We can support this piece of work to try and put some shape around it a bit more to ensure our involvement in the operational component. Because I think that's kind of what we need to do now, is sit down with your operations team and start giving some more definition to this plan, so we can understand and scope up what is going to be the cost of our contributions to these. But we need the right people around the table too, and that's not necessarily us who are sitting around here. So I think that I'm going to go back and bring our tangata whenua members together, and with Sam, and sort of, I guess, say what I've just said here is we're trying to now go from the advisory capacity that's sitting around here into a more technical operational phase, and it's going to take some different skill sets. It's going to come at a cost initially before we can really put some detail around that. So I want some consideration to be given to that, our participation in that operational delivery.
Any other comments or thoughts? Bill?
Kelvin, can you bring up the slide? I think you had the two recommendations around the projects. No. Ah, yes, yep. So are you, well, just taking a step back, end of the financial year is pending. there's no allocation of the current 250k. So are you wanting to go away from this meeting having a clear resolution in terms of A and B, in terms of allocation of funding, to actually get things moving? Okay. For a very long time, until a new council's in place.
going forward from June, we've got this small group. We'll start bringing the other groups together to try and get some traction on some of those other points that you've raised.
Just following on then, Chair, I'd be happy, and I'm looking at Coral or someone else, in terms of framing up what the resolutions would look like in terms of those two projects. At least then that provides that direction that you've outlined, Kelvin. So I'm happy to, when we get to it, Chair, to move along those lines if we've got an appropriately framed recommendation.
Any other comments, thoughts on this discussion? So, any other thoughts? Maru.
The paper I'd like to see is the importance of the Waiari in terms of a quadruple bottom line. The benefit of the Waiari for social, cultural, environmental and economic will be. If you line that up, I think that it's easier to tap into the funds that you require. In the Department of Conservation, Historical Places Trust and the National Policy Statement, RMA, will all link into one of those quadruple bottom lines. Even the port funds will have to contribute that, because if it wasn't for the Waiari, Tauranga City Council won't have any water, and there'd be very few boats going out to meet the Japanese to take the logs. And the Central North Island has an obligation to the port of Tauranga too, because you see their logs coming in from the Central North Island every day. So where does the Waiari play in that? It plays a big part in the social, cultural, environmental and economic well-being. If you did a simple paper on that, the solutions will drag everybody in kicking and screaming, because they would have a responsibility.
Yeah, kia ora. I'd support that too, that we need a resolution to access that money and get work underway. Looking at that timeline to get new elected members around the table, it's too long. We've got to have something by next summer, when our kids are going out there and they're swimming, when our communities are ready to interact with our river. We need something in place. And yeah, not going to wait till 25th of July, considering trying to give time for the scope we've got to put around it, and then the delivery. So yeah, I support that.
I just wonder if I could bring Ruben into the conversation from Regional Council's perspective. He may be able to give us a bit more of an insight on how our submission went and if there's any outcome.
Thanks, Kelvin. Morena tātou. So as Kelvin said, Shad and Darlene came and spoke to our council as part of the LTP hearings, and then we had deliberations at the end of last month. I think the very short version is that the request for funding far exceed the amount of money that council had available. So what staff have been asked to do is develop some criteria around a list of initiative funds, so volunteers, Māori, community initiatives, and surf lifesaving, that sort of category. I think I'll be able to provide more detail around what that looks like after the long-term plan is adopted on the 26th of June. And it may be that we have a bit of a process to work through next year. I think important that the detail is put around what those monitors look like, and that's the meeting that Kelvin mentioned, and that conversation's been going on for a while as well. So I think to be successful in that, when it gets into the detail next year, we need some real clarity around what that looks like. and thanks for acknowledging Pim coming into that initial meeting, Shad, and I think it would be good to get Pim come and give a presentation to this group, so that there is a shared understanding of the work that happens in that catchment. Not quite, if it's okay, not quite related to this, but worth noting that Alva's report was also considered, or is being considered as part of our navigation safety bylaw review. So there's an issue there with speed of boats on the Kaituna River, and so excellent to have that information available, and for that committee to know about this work. So essentially where people swim on the Kaituna River, and what we can do through the bylaw to keep those people safe.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just want to, yes, I was the only one that attended the monitoring meeting the other day. It was very fruitful, even though I was the only one there. Again, it highlights the need to have more than just our advisors around the table, meeting with the likes of Gina and the other woman, sorry, I forgot her name, that I met with. And we need the right capability to sit there as well. So, yeah, no, I think a bit of definition around that can be shaped up pretty quick, smart, especially with Gina and the team there. So, yeah, appreciated that opportunity. Again, I want to bring some other people to that conversation, not just our advisory group here. So, and that'll help give it some body. And just one more point, I guess, with the committing of dollars and the resolution that we're trying to get across the line here, I really think we need to get our toe in the water, or we need to commit. You know, the discussions, we've got money there. Once we actually get tools, shovels in the ground, I think the rest will flow a lot more naturally. So looking for a bit of courage, I guess, just to commit to this. And let's go. Got it?
Any other final thoughts? I suppose the three things from me that kind of stick out is, and I take up on his point that he's just made, and I think everybody's saying the same thing, is that we need to get started. We do have budget available. Let's get cracking on those two projects in particular. So we'll need a resolution around that. The other two things I think is continue to work together, particularly across the catchment with the other groups, to assist, I think, in terms of prioritising the other projects. So we do have a limited amount of pūtea available to deliver on the suite of projects, but we need to understand, I suppose, where the priorities are, particularly being guided by tangata whenua. And then the last one is around funding. I think once we've understood what the priorities are, and we know how much money we've got, then what the gap is, and where we need to fill that gap. So whether that's, I know Western Bay, we'll be making a submission to Western Bay, and I do understand there is budget available in their long-term plan, so thanks Western Bay for that, and we'll be supporting that through the long-term plan process. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know what the figure is, but it's probably not going to be sufficient to be able to cover the full cost in the suite of projects. And then what are the other alternatives with the likes of TECT and some of the other grassroots funders that we may be able to access. So I think let's kick on. Let's continue to work together, prioritise the projects, and then understand what funding we need to deliver the full suite of projects, but also prioritise the ones that we can work through in delivery. So the first two, we may be able to work through the next 2 or 3 or 4 over the next year or 2. Does that kind of make sense? Bill?
A couple of further clarifications. So Kelvin, on page 20, paragraph 16, you've listed the 6 proposed initiatives. I'm just thinking aloud here, is do you need, or do the staff or the teams need approval or confirmation of the 6, and then we're saying 2 projects in terms of being funded from the current funding allocation? What I'm getting at is in terms of, okay, so at least we know what the 6 initiatives are, so that's anchored, and then two in particular can then move forward in terms of being funded with current funding.
Yeah, that's probably in a nutshell. The two projects, obviously, they touch across a couple of those initiatives. And initially, we wanted to keep the 6 as they are because they were presented to us in that way. But there is synergies around river access points and the restoration that sit closely together, even the storytelling. So I'm happy as what you suggest, because they are just projects. They can fit in any of those categories, but they are projects in themselves. And I think. I'm pleased to note that it's a valuable thing to get started on and gets us going, and then we can move from there.
My second question, in terms of if today we confirm the two projects in terms of funding, etc., is that then sufficient for the team to get on and then execute that? That don't have to go back to TCC or anyone else in terms of that, those two particular projects.
No, that's fine. We can do that.
We'll just get some direction on these resolutions.
So we are having a discussion here. So a part of the issue for us at TCC is and it's around project funding. So essentially, normally we would try and carry the current 250,000 forward for another year. We have some financial constraints within council, which poses an issue for us. And so I'd need to work that one through. I can't automatically say. That's why I want, if I can get some direction, I've got a month to look at trying to spend that money. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy with what you've suggested, and obviously from the 1st of July we've already got funding for the next year there. So.
I just didn't want to see the current 250 disappear into the ether.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with it?
Well, yes, I think my suggestion would be that you prioritise the two projects, and that's from this group, which you can do, and then separately make a recommendation to council that any monies that's not spent be carried forward from that 250,000 in this financial year.
There could be a flurry of activity between now and the 30th of June.
Yeah, there could be, and I'm conscious that it may not be such a big issue, but normally it's dollar for dollar. So at the moment, from staff's perspective, if we move that money to next year, we have to offset it against another particular project, and that project needs to move out. So there's a little bit of complexity to it. But I don't want to complicate that here today, but we'll work our way through it.
Just while we're waiting for those resolutions, any other comments, thoughts, points of clarification?
Yeah. In regard, as has already been well outlined, Western Bay's long-term plans delayed, and so funding's not confirmed for a while yet. But Elva's report, I can say, has been well received. But perhaps further to those, there have been some discussions at a Te Puke Community Board level around how they might encourage, help, facilitate a footbridge across the Waiari and linkages up to Makahe Marae. It's obviously very initial discussions at this stage, but those are ideas that are floating around, being talked about, and could help in terms of opportunity for connections there. And I guess the other thing is that, yeah, in terms of particularly these projects, I think it's endorsing what Raponi said, that the visibility of these initial ones is makes them prime ideal to start with, and make them very visible to the community.
Okay, A in our report is just to receive the cultural recognition update. B, we've got approves the prioritisation of the following cultural recognition projects. Tā Wakepito River Access, the Waiari Bridge River Access, and then also recommends to Council to carry forward the additional funds underspend to the next financial year, or the underspend of the 250 through to, should that be the 24-25? Yep. Any comments on those recommendations?
I'm just wondering whether it needs something more than just approves the prioritisation. Approves the prioritisation and implementation of the following. Just we can prioritise all we like, but it's just making sure some stuff happens. Okay. Well, I'm subject to any other views, Chair. I'm happy to move those recommendations. Aye.
Sorry, great, thank you. Thanks, Calvin, and also want to acknowledge the team, the iwi and hapu members that contributed to that piece of work, and also to Sam for his facilitation and pulling that together. But I think it's a great result for us to, and I suppose from a commission point of view, we've been quite focused on getting stuff done, so this is another one of those things of trying to get some stuff done. So just want to acknowledge everybody's contribution into the development of these projects. Ka pai. Okay, where am I? Okay, so we've concluded the business for today. Are there any late items for discussion? I don't think we have any. Oh. Yep.
Just wanted to comment on a couple of other issues, perhaps not directly related to this group, but in terms of Western Bay's issues that they've been dealing with, that there have been questions in the community about. One is the Western Bay water supply from the bores at Muttons there, as we referred to. Those bores are, well, council has installed a ultraviolet light in an endeavour to meet current drinking water standards that have been upgraded, of course. But one of the issues is that there's a degree of sand in the water, which if that nullifies the effect of the ultraviolet light. So while that ultraviolet light is currently installed, it's not operational until such time as a further filter is in place to reduce the sand level, so it can work effectively. But that will also have the added benefit then, of course, of less sediment in the water for those who receive that supply. And the other one was in regard to the upgraded wastewater plant at Te Puke. There have been some delays there, but the earthworks consent is now in place to proceed with the earthworks for the plant. There have been some challenges with the design process, and there's been brought forward some alternative suggestions in terms of that design that might enhance, but that's still a work in progress to resolve those issues before we see anything on the ground. I don't know whether EJ wants to add anything to that, but yeah, so yeah, that's just a bit of an update on those two from Western Bay's point of view.
Any other comments?
Yeah, we're going to do a literature review on the Papmore Hills. There was some resistance to it, but we're going to go through it, and what you're going to find that there's over 124 streams that links to the Waiari from the Papmore Hills. You would also see a history of the aqua filters that comes from Mōtane Wainuku right down to the Papmore Hills. And you will also see the flows that goes into Horoipia. The Horoipia was the wetlands that leads into the Waiaraki, which has also impact on the Kaituna River. You're going to get that type of literature review, and then you'll get a good picture of where the Waiari sits in the whole environment. And because we don't have mana to the whenua. It's the birds, the bees, and the trees that has the mana to the whenua. That's our customary right. If there's no fish in the creek, then there's something wrong with the creek. So they got the mana to the creek, not us. And you'll find that in a literature review that will come out in the Papmore Hills, and you'll see how the Waiari and its linkages and distributions are. There are other matters that could be dealt with also. There may be plumbing plans in terms of separating secondary use water from drinking water. All those sort of things actually need to be discussed. They may have to do what we were going to do in Paengaroa some years ago, about having a fertilizer, taking the separating the waste, putting it into rich fertilizer, making rich fertilizer. That was debunked too, because people thought it was a sacred cow that you're playing around with sewage and turning it into fertilizer. There's all these issues in terms of the long plan and what we do with water, and the Waiari is a very important part. As I pointed out, it's important to the regional economy because of the situation of Tauranga. It's important to the national economy because of all the logs and all that provides for our economy that goes out the port. Yeah. So these are matters that need to be collated into one and say, this is how important the Waiari is. And these are all it's involved in it, and they can bring out their checkbooks and help pay for it.
Thanks, Shad. Just wanted to pick up on a point Kelvin made earlier on in terms of this is the last meeting for Shad and I of this group after 3.5 years. So really just to wish the group all the best in the future. I was really keen today, certainly from my own personal perspective, that we've got the cultural recognition initiatives underway, because they have been, when we started, floating around, so to speak, and just acknowledging the work of the team in particular in the last year of actually distilling all of those down, and actually then coming to the group with recommendations. So in the September meeting, you'll have some new TCC representatives, whoever they will be. well, we'll just have to wait. But I've certainly personally valued being a member of the advisory group. It's part of that's been a learning curve for myself as we've progressed along, but also getting some greater understanding in terms of the significance of the Waiari and the catchment for tangata whenua and mana whenua. So we'd really just acknowledge the contribution everyone's made over that period of time. And time we get some new TCC members. I think the Western Bay are probably in terms from a council perspective, will be the longest attending, John, given there's a change in local government. So yeah, I really just wanted to acknowledge all that, and thanks for the input and camaraderie, and being made to feel welcome throughout that 3.5 years. We've had some quite interesting discussions, and some of them probably got a bit testy at some times over various issues, but I think in terms of its testament to the group of how we've navigated through that with some very good advice from all of the representatives around the table, and also the partner staff in that process. And just finally, I'm not too sure where this group will sit, or with the whole Three Waters work that's going to go on into the future, but that'll be something for others to consider. But I just wanted to note that that's just something to keep an eye on as that initiative gets progressed in the next 18 months to 2 years. So really thanks very much, and all the best. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank both you and Bill and Chad for all the guidance and direction that we've had in the last 3.5 years. But one of the issues, and there was 7 cultural recognition, one is still on the table somewhere, or maybe it's down the Waiari and out at the estuary. And the 7th one was around marae. And that water, and that issue around MOU, and it's my opinion that our peoples, and we've got affected parties now with Waiari stage 2 and 3, that need consideration. So you will all recall the cultural recognition point that I was pushing was for our marae to have water, and for it to be formalised. I'm still parked on the bench. I'm probably out at the estuary somewhere, really, because I either need support or direction on where to go to with that one. But in terms of all your wonderful work, Chad and Bill, thank you very much. John, we got some work to do. And Reuben, I don't know about this in-kind business, that's kind of what I'm hearing, but let's have that conversation. Thank you. I don't know where to go with this cultural recognition aspect number 7, because you all know I've basically pulled my hair out. It's longer than it should be, and but I'm sure you all understand that the real benefit to our people would be that our marae receive that water. I'm happy to have any more discussions, go and see the people that I need to, report to joint governance, hint hint. We'll see how that goes though, because Maru and I presented to joint governance in 2020. We went back again until it was no longer. So when we first went, we were only asking for 1%. It don't look like 1% anymore. I still haven't received any of the reports that we've requested. and that's in relation to the water usages that our marae currently have. So, anybody want to stick their hand up and help? Rapuni, of course you would. But thank you all. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to tautoko that. Thank you, Bill and Shad. I've just come recently, but I've been involved in this for a long time, years and years and years and years in the background, doing lots of bits and pieces. So I read the minutes. I've been there in the background, so only just got here in the front. You two are leaving. I really think some traction has been made since you guys came on as commissioners from the old setup. I'm a little bit concerned going forward about ensuring that there's consistency of the progression that we've made around this table, because it's been a lot of hard work. And again, I don't want to keep bringing it back, well actually I do, is that it's a lot of commitment from us to try and get an outcome. And like I said, we get zero, in the whole scheme of things, zero resourcing to really push this. We're pouring our heart and passion into this, so we'd really appreciate that when you do a handover, some form of handover, that our tangata whenua members have an opportunity to see what that looks like, to ensure that whatever is conveyed to the incoming councillors, that our interests around this table are protected. And the manner in which we've managed to get some traction over the recent times is going to be consistent. So kia ora, and then yeah, just capped it off, thanks.
Any other final comments? Maru?
Yes, I think that you as commissioners played a very important part that brought the council back in attempting to bring them back online, because I think that they were didn't have a full understanding of standing orders and all those sort of things, and they just went all their own way. But the fear that I have is the new councils, when they try and resolve the problems, they'll blame the commissioners, because that's what the National Party does with the Labour Party with Ardern. They don't sum up all the good things that she'd done with the COVID and that, and of course this National Party is quick to blame Ardern's party and all that sort of thing. And that's likely to happen with this new council. When things get too hot for them, they can just blame the commissioners, and I would be having something to say there.
Okay, yeah, thank you for those words. Yeah, I think just from my perspective as well, along with Bill, it's been a pleasure, I think, sitting around this table. Yes, we have had some, I think it was probably more at the outset, and probably for us to get our heads around the relationship that Tauranga City Council has with Western Bay, but also with tangata whenua, given the water is coming from the east to service the city. It's interesting to note, and Bill mentioned the three waters and what the future looks like there. The government does have an amendment bill out at the moment that sets the frame for how waters will be managed in the future, and for councils to then develop their water plans. The last council meeting we did confirm from a Tauranga City Commission perspective our desire to continue to work with Western Bay. We are working with Western Bay through our service agreement with Downers to service our waters, and it makes sense for us to continue to do that. So this latest amendment sets up the frame for how we will work together, but also looking at how we create the conditions to be more financially sustainable. And then I think there's another bill coming at the end of the year, which will then separate out and provide the frame for a development of a council-controlled organisation to separate that from our balance sheet. It would be great for the committee just to be aware of what that looks like, and then also Bill's comment about, so how does this fit within that context of a new waters entity, a CCO, owned by the community but run by an independent board, and the relationship between that entity and this group, and in particular tangata whenua. So there are still some changes that need to be worked through, But I think as a group we need to be mindful of all of that. And then just coming back to Raponi's point about the incoming council, the Commission will be leaving a report for the incoming council, our briefing essentially to the incoming council. I don't know if it gets down to that level of detail, but hopefully gives some guidance to the incoming council about what we've done and about, I suppose, the community's view about how to continue the track that the Commission's been on. And I'm sure the staff will induct the new committee members for this committee when the time comes, which will probably be in August, September. But with those words, I just wanted to mihi to everybody, to our staff, to our partners sitting around the table, given this last meeting. So with those words, tuku mihi kia tātou katoa, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ka hoa atu rā te rākau kia koera e manu, me whakakapi tēnei o tā tātou nei hui, no reira tēnā koutou. I declare the meeting closed.